jigsaw. We're filming. Keep jigsawing. That'll give you more aggressive. Yeah. Slow down a little. Lock this table. I thought I'd take just a minute and let you see a little bit of what's going on. Right now we're working on pedestals. I quickly ran some numbers. There is 680 square feet, not board foot, because there's a lot more than that, because a lot of this material is 5/4 and a lot of it's 6/4. So board footage is a whole lot more. But there's 680 board feet of finished wood. Now when we talk about finishing, you got to double that, because we're going to have to spray the bottom sides and the insides of everything. I just want you to get the magnitude of kind of what's going on here. What Tyler's doing is he's kerfing the panels for the ends of the pedestals. By the time we're done, there will be 1,066 curves. That's how many times that thing's got to pass over that table saw. You know, you don't do that before lunch. Now, we're not even talking about the amount of glue up and the amount of glue up. We're about 1.5 gallons of Type Bond 3. And I have no idea the hours of processing, sanding, just to make the panels. Sanding 680 square feet of wood. And not to mention the weight and the size of just being able to logistically move it. Now Jim, what he's doing, he's down for a couple days. He's jigsawing out the basic form of the pedestals. Now because we have different size tables and whatever, all the pedestals, well, the pedestals are different sizes. That's a small one. Now once he's jigsawed it out, then I'll router cut it. And then if you remember, I'll come back and cut the rabbet in it so we can fit the ends into it and bend the ends in. Hope we got enough clamps.
That's just pedestals.
Do what, Devin?
Just the pedestals. Yeah, that's not
Yeah,
even staying the work.
and believe it or not, there's a significant amount more wood in the pedestals than there are in the tabletops. Tabletops were a piece of cake compared to these pedestals. Oh my God. If you've been here, as you well know, I've got a few clamps. We've ran out more than once. And back here behind Jim, that's the actual conference table stacked, because if you look around, you know, this thing's like eating an elephant. And there's only one way to do it. That's one bite at a time. Well, let me tell you what. Everybody in here, their jaws are sore from chewing. This isn't fun. And just hours and hours and hours. That's fun, isn't it, Tyler?
Oh, yeah, tons. About how many cuts do you think I have in each of these pieces?
I don't know how many you have now, but when you're done, you'll have 1,066.
1,066 individual cuts?
Yeah. So that's how many times you're going to push that board across that saw. Now we'll switch off to something else. Otherwise, your arm ain't going to work tomorrow. Of course, he's been doing it since yesterday, so I mean, you know, those of you who were here and participated in building the bomb bay with the dado, child's play. That ain't nothing, especially when you got 4 or 5 people doing it. What you think?
It's a lot of work. A lot of work. So one step at a time.
Yeah. It's all you can do and just keep doing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the other thing is we can't even stand the tables till we get the pedestals built. But then we're going to have to do them one at a time, because some of these tables, some of the pedestals we will, but some of the tables we can't even get in the spray booths. And the manpower it takes to move it. You know, you take here's 14 foot by 4 foot wide. Here's 6 foot wide by 12 foot long. Now that's 4 pieces, of course, but you drop one of them. Just the size, the mass, the weight. There's a 5 foot round table. You drop that piece of wood, that panel, you're going to split it. But we're going to keep chewing. Now in a little bit, we're going to be gluing up the pedestals, some of the pedestals. We'll tag you along on that and see how that comes out. A lot of thinking, a lot of mock-ups, and a lot of, God, I hope this works.
One step at a time.
Do what?
One step at a time.
That's all you can say. One step at a time.
Yep.
One bite at a time.
We'll get it. We'll get it. Just keep it going steady.
Yeah, I mean, you can't,
Can't rush things.
well, you can't, you just got to stay focused and keep chewing. Okay, guys, we'll be back. Jim, come on up here. Come on. Nothing to it. This all falls together by itself. No work involved. Piece of cake. What's wrong?
Got enough clamps, calls?
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do,
Patience.
man. Now I'll show you a little bit more inside of here. We'll go in and put corner blocks down it to reinforce the corners. And then I'm going to take some 1/4-inch plywood, that 3-layer stuff, and cut some strips and go down the back of each one of the ends. That still allows it to expand and contract, but it'll reinforce that and keep it from flexing. Again, it's not the fact of the 1/4-inch plywood being so strong as each one of those curves, that little space in between doesn't matter. It's the glue joint. It's the glue line. That's what makes it so strong. It's just like these round pedestals. What makes it so strong is that glue line. Same thing with plywood.
How long will you stay in clamps?
How long we stay in clamps?
Yeah.
Well, seeing as how this is the first one I've glued up, I don't know. Well, actually, I think if we go in here, I think we can go in here now. Now you see what we had to do was cut cawls. Interesting. We'll go ahead and cut the glue blocks and put them down the corners and let it dry, and that'll keep it from moving. Well, there's only 12 to go. We'll be back. Well, this is we just rough cut the top, excuse me, top out on this is the 4-foot round. You know, in my world where you just kind of think this stuff up and kind of envision it in your mind, that's where my SketchUp is. Not on a computer. I think it up, but I brought my #1 shop helper in here to see what she thinks of it. If you haven't met her, this is Sweet Pea. And to say that she's a little bit spoiled is an understatement. She's got to go to the vet this morning to get a rabies shot. She don't know that. All she knows is she's got her little dress on, and that means it's time to go bye-bye. You like going bye-bye, don't you, huh? Are you spoiled? You don't know what to do. But you like Daddy's table? Huh? I hope you're sitting and not squatting. That pretty? You like that? Okay. You don't like it up here. I'll get you down. But my point is that when you finally get to see it in reality, that's that pucker factor. And when you see it and the proportions and everything look good, it's a load off your mind. Okay, guys, we'll be back. Okay. It's been real tough getting a show this week, just because all we've been doing is cutting panels and jigsawing, but this is one of the pedestals. After it came out of clamps, I thought I'd show it to you. Little 120, it'll be good. Did good. But you know, I told Devin, I said, you know, by the time we get these done, we'll have them figured out. One of the first things we had an issue with was, you know, when you go to set this end panel, you know, it's straight. So, you know, it's kind of like trying to wrestle an octopus. No. So something as simple as taking a brad nail and set this flush and pop one in each corner so you don't have to deal with the height. And then you make up a call. Well, that proved to be another wrestling match. Because of the sweep, they're wanting to ride up and all this stuff, and you just want to scream. So it became very simple. Put an end on it. Put a clamp across it. So now you don't have to hold the calls. Made a tremendous difference. We're down now to the point that we can glue one up in about 20 minutes. As long as your shoulders hold it, but that's a lot of, well, here's what you got. Because of the sweep, you got a pipe clamp going across it. Or you got to tighten a little bit here. Get another one, start tightening it, and then you got to take this one off. You just kind of got to walk it in. But
One side at a time? You do both ends at the same time.
now we do the whole shooting match. Yeah. Well, the thing is, what Jeff had asked was, did you do one side at a time? Actually, and we looked at that, but the problem was, you got to have all the components in here to keep everything square. So, you know, if we're going to fit this up, it's going to have glue on it. And it did quite well. And like I told you earlier, what we'll do now is, now, these get a notch cut in them and a stretcher across it, a batten, to extend out. And that's what we'll attach to the bottom of the table. And that not only gives us something to attach the top, but what it does, it also acts as a batten, to keep those tops from ever cupping. Now, unfortunately, the mahogany one will be the last one you see. I mean, it's not like space here is abundant. I mean, there'll be 13 of these. And they're in different sizes. And early on I showed you the kerfing. Well, my kerfer's no longer with me. Worked 11 hours. And just decided that this wasn't for him. So I've only got about 550 kerfs to go. Help. And that's another thing with the mahogany one. Well, actually all of them is just trying to get enough people together just to move these monsters. Wow. I'm still concerned of how I'm going to finish them. I mean, actually the conference table, they're about 3 foot wide by 12 foot long, so they're not too bad. We can get them over in the finished building. The 14 foot by 4 foot, that's another animal. Because just when you pick it up, this thing's like, you know, it's like a, and so you got to have 3 or 4 people. But even then, when you get it in the finished room, they're 16 foot. Yeah, just getting them in there is one thing, but then you don't have any room to get around them much to spray. Now sides you do, but ends you don't. And then you got to flip them and flip them some more. So the only thing I know to do, and again, we're using this conversion varnish, and typically, now again, it's a post-catalyst finish. There's a coat of sanding sealer and 2 coats of finish. We should be able to set 2 tops up in here. Now we've got these big fans, so hopefully we can just finish them in here.
Dust.
A lot of dust. Well, I've got a dust control. Turn all the fans on, open all the doors, and clean house. But you know, I'm going to tell you something. Oddly enough, for many years, we did not have a finish booth. We didn't have a spray booth. And we would just finish it right out in the middle of the floor. And unless you really do a lot of disturbing everything, you didn't get much dust at all. It worked good. But we'll give it a good blowing down before we start. My only concern is the 2 14-footers. But still, like I told you early on, there's 680 square foot of surface to be finished. Now that's finished. That's sanded finished. But then you got to double that. That's how much surface area we've got to get coated. Because we got to spray inside these pedestals, the bottoms of the tops, and everything else. You weren't here, Jeff. I told him, I said, this thing's like eating an elephant, though. You just, one bite at a time.
Spraying inside would be better than spraying them outside?
Do what?
You spray them outside?
I could spray them outside, but the problem that you've got is with most any finish. Now, water-based isn't as bad, but with a post-catalyst, with this, basically it's like an epoxy. With the heat we've had, that's another concern. You know, these tops have got, these things have got, you got to be able to get them wet. And I mean, when it's the mid-90s and the sun blaring down on, 2 things can happen. Number one, you can't get the finish on fast enough. The second problem is you can blister it. You know, wood has pores. And if, you take a solvent-based finish like lacquer, spray it, set it outside. Man, you'll get blisters look like basketballs. Because what happens is the sun and the heat dry the surface. But the air, still in the wood that's trying to escape out of the pores can't. And so, blisters. Now, it'll work out. But one thing with a post-cat finish, you can, you're talking hour or 2 between coats. You can move. Most of them will tell you that after an overnight cure, typically 12, 18 hours, hey, you can wrap it, pack it, and ship it. That's what makes it so popular with furniture manufacturers and whatever it is. You know, back in the old days when it was all nitrocellulose lacquer, man, it took weeks and weeks before they could pack it because it would print. And God help you, and that's even so today, even on a post-catalyzed finish. If you use bubble wrap or any kind of plastic, I've told everybody 100 times, most all your finishes are a form of plastic. And you put bubble wrap on that thing, when you open it up a couple of days later, oh my. I hope you like bubble wrap as a finish because that's what's going to be on there. Yeah, you've got to put some kind of something, some paper or something in between that's not going to react with the finish. So, okay, guys. Hopefully next week we'll have some more to show you. We're still gluing up pedestals, obviously. A lot of work.
You're looking good.
They're looking good, but man, like I was telling them, man, all we've done is chop, rip, glue, chop, rip, glue, process, sand, plane. You know, sorry, my hips bother me. Man, it's a ton of work. You know,
That's why you get paid the big bucks.
right. He said that's why you get paid the big bucks. Yeah, right. The problem is, you know, and that's just the way it is in woodworking. As you all know, a lot of times, in this case, building it ain't so bad. It's making the wood and processing the wood. You know, 680 square feet, you know, a 20 by 20 living room is 400 square feet. And now it's all down to random orbit sanders.
That'll take a while.
That's going to take a while. You got it. Yeah, well. Now, Gary Richardson, you posted out on the Facebook thing, how did the old timers do these bent, these round aprons? Well, there's two ways I've seen them do it. The first is, because you made a comment, you said, well, they didn't have plywood and thin wood. No, they didn't have plywood, but they did have thin woods. How do you think they made veneers? I mean, a veneer saw is like a back saw, but the blade is turned sideways, and it usually had a little guide on, and it just sawed sideways. And then they'd take a hand plane, clean it up. So making thin wood was not an issue for them at all. Yeah, it was a lot more laborious than we do today. And the only reason I used plywood was quick, fast, easy, and available. But the other way they did it, and I hope I can explain this to you, is they stacked it. Now, what does that mean? They would take, and they would have an angle cut on each end. And then they would stagger it, set it so that it walked around the circle. And then they would take the next piece and lap that joint and just keep walking around and build it up. And then take a hand plane and finish out the round. Have you ever seen these big corner cabinets that's got the great big shell on the top of it? Have you ever noticed something? They're always painted. They use a technique very similar to that. To make that big cove in there, they took pieces of wood and just kept stacking them, overlapping to stack it, and then they would take spoke shaves and get in there and create the cove, if you will, and then they would carve the shell. That's the way they did it. Oh, you look in the back of one of them things, my goodness, the hide glue, And you know, high glue still works. But the advantage to high glue is it doesn't need to dry. It just needs to cool. You melt it, stick it on there, give it a few seconds, and move on. Work good. So that's how they did it. And you know, you see a lot of tables, and in the corners, and particularly bracket feet where they wanted a support in the middle, they did the same thing. You would just see stacks of, that's the way they did it. Okay guys, well hopefully next week we got a lot more to show you. Back to gluing. I'll catch you next week.